Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me for this segment, we have Fernandez, managing partner at Fiat Ventures and former business development and marketing at Ripple, to discuss why the launch of the FedNow network is important for three key reasons. Marcos, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thanks for having me, Jill.
You got it. Let's go through each of these three key reasons. I want to start with bringing the U.S. on par with other major and emerging markets. What is the benefit there?
It really puts us on par with other markets. And what's interesting there is it's not that the US hasn't developed this before. We're actually the first to market when it comes to developing wire, ACH, and real-time payment systems. But these other markets that didn't have these foundations in place, they've really been able to come together with more modern infrastructure. So for us, we first started developing ACH programs in the late 60s into the 70s. Fed wires were updated in the 80s. But you haven't seen a lot of real infrastructural changes since that time. You see developments of RTPs, real-time payments from the Zelles. Obviously, Venmo's been around for a while. But what this is this is a layer below all the consumer-facing applications that really help us enable not just individual payments for consumers, but business payments and other forms of payments that are really standard across the world today.
And secondly, consumers can win more with a more efficient system.
Yeah, this one's going to be a little bit different, right? Where you're not going to download an app that says FedNow and then go in and input your information. This one's sitting at the bank and infrastructure level, and then a lot of small and medium-sized businesses will be able to utilize that as well. But at the end of the day, consumers like you and I, whether it's tax returns, the way that we pay for certain processes or payouts in the future of certain federal programs, it'll become just a lot more efficient and seamless in those cases. So you don't have to wait until end of day to see if something gets there. We don't have to check with each other to say, hey, did that wire come in? Did you receive that? It'll happen instantaneously, which makes all of our lives much more seamless and more efficient.
Do you think this could open up new opportunities, particularly on a global basis, if you're able to execute a business on this platform?
I think domestically for sure, right? So it's the founders who are working with these banking partners to really enable these real-time payments throughout their flows. So again, not just for consumers, but for businesses and different type of embedded use cases that you have. Now, globally, you still see a lot of these inefficiencies as it relates to cross-border payments. I worked on that for about 4 years when I was at Ripple. And unfortunately, even though these domestic payments will become more seamless, you still have a lot of inefficiencies globally as it relates to just correspondent banking networks and communication of different types of payments. So the short answer is yes, domestically, absolutely, or payments that are coming into our country and then get dispersed, but not necessarily on a global landscape. You'll still have some of those inefficiencies that I know a lot of companies like those at Ripple are working on fixing.
So Marcos, do you think that this could have an impact to businesses like PayPal, Venmo, Zelle? How will it impact their models?
Yeah, it's a great question. The short answer is time will tell, right? So FedNow, unlike a standard app, it'll take time to really adopt this technology at a wide scale. So we've seen some pilots in place. This just got rolled out to a broad audience. That'll continue to get rolled out to more and more banks over time. The way that they're positioning is that it'll be complementary to these other solutions. I do think that it'll replace some of these payment systems. But I think the Zelles and the Venmos of the world, they'll learn to adopt this type of FedNow technology, and they'll all find their certain place within this ecosystem. So whether it's FedNow completely disrupting those models or those models incorporating those types of payments so that at the end of the day, consumers like you and I, we don't know if it's a FedNow payment or a real-time payment. All it'll do is it'll force us to have a better experience in that real-time payment technology. And again, FedNow is just an additional catalyst to push us into that modern age of being able to just transact with each other domestically at the drop of a hat, as opposed to having to wait hours or days for payments to get processed.
Will there be any fees attached? I know, for example, if I send a wire, it's $25 to send a wire. Do you think through FedNow that there'll be reduced fees or no fees at all?
There are reduced fees, right? So wires are the most expensive because they're instantaneous. Then ACH still has some fees incorporated. Sometimes some of your financial institutions will pick up some of the bill for that. But ultimately, what you will see is that those fees will get pushed down to zero. Now, what I anticipate is any institution or organization wants to attract your business, they'll reduce those fees down to zero, which will create a really good, again, consumer experience. And they're likely to take the cost of those structures so that they can win your business and try to cross-sell you to other types of services that they have.
Yeah, well, it's almost like we saw with the online brokers, right? Look how cheap it is to do a trade now relative to, the mid to late 90s when these platforms first started coming on. So, if they can get it to scale like they did with the brokers, I mean, it could potentially, fees could be nominal.
That's a great analogy. That's exactly it, right? It's not just the efficiencies of real-time payment, but to your point, it forces more and more competition across these different platforms, which means that they'll push towards zero. And again, not traditionally, if you wanted a wire, and wires will still be prevalent because there's thresholds as far as how much money you can send. So wires are important for really large transaction volumes, but it puts a lot of downward pressure on all these different platforms to make it just, again, more efficient for consumers, free, cheap, quick, easy. And it seems funny that in 2023, these things are such an exciting transition, but this is just what is happening in our market and what we see in international markets as well.
All right, Marcos, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Awesome. Thanks, Jill. Great to be on.